read this morning by Troise and his bandolier.
This banjo was owned by Pasquale Troise of BBC fame in the 1940s and 50s with his radio program Music While You Work series. It was sold by James Charles Bertolle, who was born in Islington, London in 1875. His father, who was a banjoist, taught his son James to play the instrument at an early age. In 1897, J.C. Bertolle was playing duets in public with another banjo player named Heat. A year later he organized a banjo club made up of his pupils. By then he had become a professional photographer with studios at 268 Caledonian Road, London, but managed to give between 30 and 40 banjo lessons every week. In 1898 he formed a playing partnership with Gordon Tate, calling themselves the Dexters, who made their concert debut at a Camire concert. Within a short time they had played at most of the concert halls within 50 miles of London. They were known as the British Maze and Hunter. The instruments they played were all Bertolle Dexter banjos. Dexter banjos were sold exclusively by Bertolle, who, in his advertisements, stated that they were built by him, but that is doubtful. It is difficult to know for sure who exactly built these beautiful high-grade banjos. It is very likely that it was Richard Spencer, as they have all the hardware and headstock features of the early Spencer instruments. Spencer died in 1915. No Dexter banjos appear to have been sold after about 1930. Bertolle passed away in 1951. It's likely that this banjo, owned by Pasquale Troise, was built in the early 1900s. It is in beautiful condition along with its original case and engraved head plate as well. Pasquale Troise, who owned this Bertolle Dexter banjo, was born in Naples in 1895 and took up the clarinet at an early age, graduating to the school band at the age of 7. It was several years later that he began learning the banjo, mandolin, and guitar, becoming a proficient performer in all three instruments. He had strung this banjo as a tenor 4-string, finding its wider neck easier to play with his large hands. I have converted it back to a 5-string and have strung it with Aquila Classic Nile gut strings. Troise came to the UK in the early 20s and in 1926 joined the London Radio Dance Band directed by Sidney Furman and subsequently Jack Padbury. After a spell with Jack Padbury's sextet at the Cosmo Club, Pasquale Troise decided to form his own band, the Selecta Plectrum Mandolin Orchestra. He secured a recording contract with Decca and made a number of records, including the Bohemian Girl Selection and Rendezvous by a Letter. It was hardly surprising that by the early 30s the somewhat cumbersome title of the band had changed to Troise and his Mandoliers, and having joined the variety theatre circuit, the band toured the country, commencing with the Plaza Haymarket. Their phenomenal success in the halls was due, in no small measure, to the energetic enthusiasm of their leader, Pasquale Troise. During the 30s, the Mandoliers cut over 60 sides for Rex, Regal, and Regal Zonophone with items as diverse as the Zampa Overture, Harold, and the Spanish Gypsy Dance, Marquina. When on stage, the mandolin players doubled on banjos, and the resulting combination became Troise and his Mandoliers. Some years ago Jimmy Perry presented a television series called Turns, which used rare archival clips of artists from the past, and both the Banjoliers and Mandoliers were featured. When Music While You Work was introduced in 1940, Troise was an obvious choice as a dispenser of bright and cheerful music and made his first appearance in September of that year. After 4 performances by the Mandoliers, however, it was decided that the Banjoliers were more suited to the program, banjos apparently being more audible than mandolins in noisy factories. So, all subsequent appearances were by Troise and his Banjoliers, the Mandoliers being used in other programs. During the 40s, the Banjoliers made a number of recordings on the Decca Music While You Work label. Pasquale Troise. In addition to his skills as a mandolin player and conductor, Troise was a prolific arranger and composer. Titles include Festive Romance, Jolly Archers, Here They Come and, most famous of all, a tarantella entitled Napolitana, which was actually a selection of Neapolitan songs. Other medleys arranged by Troise include Tally Ho, Gems of Stephen Foster and Songs of Old England. Another feature of his MWYW programs was a medley of current pops arranged by Billy Catersmith and later Anthony Phones Jr. The same tunes were used for several consecutive broadcasts and then replaced when they were no longer of plugging value to the publishers. Publishers would finance the cost of arrangements, providing that they were played an agreed number of times during their currency in the playlist. This, apart from reducing band leaders' arranging costs, was beneficial to publishers but understandably frowned upon by the BBC, whose charter did not permit advertising or plugging in any form, but, in practice, most band leaders did it and seemingly got away with it. No doubt the BBC turned a blind eye, providing that there was no obvious bias towards any one publisher or composer. During the 50s, Troise sometimes broadcast with a combination called Troise and his Serenaders, or as Troise and his Continental Music. This combination of 19 players was basically the mandoliers with the addition of a small string section. Early in 1957, Troise fell ill, and the banjoliers were conducted by Jack Mondell, a respected violinist who played for such famous names as Harry Davidson and Ralph Ellman, even taking over the direction of their orchestras when they were indisposed. Mondell had been taught banjo and mandolin by Troise in the 30s and had played for him ever since. Sadly, on March 21, 1957, Troise died. He had commanded tremendous respect from the music profession as well as from the BBC. Senior executive H. Campbell Ricketts once said, "I've never known him do other than a good broadcast."